So this recording was inspired by a comment I got on my last YouTube video just yesterday from a user named Geigensailor, which by the way is German for Geiger counter and is the first song on the Kraftwerk album Radioaktivität, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. So I'm inclined to like this particular user for their username alone before saying anything. And this is some complete stranger to me who, based on what this comment contains, probably doesn't like me very much, and I'm fine with that. But I'm not here to scold or argue with the person, just to give some reactions to what this person said. So I'm going to first read you the exact quote of the comment the person left, which is, "Hey, I read all of your blog and watched many of your YouTube videos and social media posts. I was directed to your blog by your one Reddit post. I wanted to let you know that during reading I found myself disagreeing with you throughout the majority. So let that be a reminder that views, hits, page visits are not generally by supporters of your cause. In my case, I just like to watch/read you spiraling and want to be updated with every ban/loss that you are, in my opinion, deservedly facing." So, to summarize with another German word, it sounds like a case of Schadenfreude. This person doesn't like me, thinks that I'm deserving what I get, and is happy to see me suffer. And what I am providing this person in terms of my writings and blogs is entertainment, the entertainment of seeing me suffer. So I totally welcome that feedback, and I want to be clear, Geigensailor, I have no bone to pick with you, but you're not giving me any new news here. I am certain that other people have had that kind of reaction before, and that you are not alone in that. I don't think you speak for everybody who reads this stuff or watches this stuff, but I do know that you speak for some sizable number of people. At the same time, I don't want to make assumptions that you are thinking about this in the same way as every other person who may dislike me. And since you've not given any further explanation of what specifically you disagree with, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't want to make you a straw man. But the first thing I want to say right off the bat is that you've given me a huge amount of attention and time, so thank you. The fact that you took the time to read the entirety of my blog, as you say you did, and to watch a whole lot of my videos means that you gave me a gift in a lot of ways of putting a lot of your time and life energy into perceiving the story, into thinking about it, into giving me that attention, which is something that I treasure and I'm happy for, whether or not you come out of it liking me or disliking me. At the same time, I want to be clear that I am not just writing this stuff for attention. There's a number of different reasons why I'm writing this stuff, but the primary one is that I'm writing it for myself. Is that writing the blog, putting the videos out there has been my biggest coping mechanism in dealing with the way I've been treated. And I do think that I've often done a better job in some of these blog posts and in some of these videos talking about this stuff in a rational, persuasive, or interesting way than I would if I were just extemporaneously talking to a person in a private conversation about it. It's often hard for me to keep my cool when doing so, and I've had so many of these conversations so many times, I am so exhausted of all of them. And that's why I want to also tell you that I don't really actually care very much about why you think what you do and what your particular justification of it is. And that's not to say that I want to argue with you or convince you otherwise. It's just to say that I think it's very unlikely that you're going to provide me any new information or any new insight that I haven't already heard from someone else. If I were to be proven wrong, if you did actually have some new insight, something you've seen and understood about this that hasn't already been explained to me in a different way, then yes, I might very well welcome that. But I don't mean this as any disrespect to you or your thoughts or your ability to parse and understand and think about what's happened. It's just a matter of, consider that I've been living in this story for 9 years, and you're a relative newcomer to it. You just learned about this recently and started reading these things and picked up these ideas. And it's natural that a lot of the things that might come to your mind quickly in seeing all this stuff is stuff that somebody else has already come across, and I've already thought of, or other people have thought of as well. But I do want to be clear that I don't believe that any of the ways I've been handling this, whether they are liked or disliked by people, come out of a lack of self-awareness. There are times where I just had enough, and I've lost self-control, and I've had to cuss at people, I've had to tear them a new asshole verbally because walking the high moral path hasn't worked for me. And I've decided, screw that, I'm just going to take my anger out and enjoy berating these people. There are other times when I can crack jokes about it and be light and fun. And there are other times where I just don't want to talk about it at all. But none of this is coming from any lack of awareness on my part, not only of the role that I play in things, but of how other people see this situation. And I do want to say that, like, again, I don't know what your specific reasons are, but I did ask you a follow-up question on that YouTube thing about what specifically you disagree with. And I don't know if we're ever going to get into a detailed discussion about that. And if you did write back to me on there, I make no promises about how much time and energy I would actually put back into responding to it. I might respond, I might not, depending on how I'm feeling. But I do think that I would be more likely to respond if you actually presented me something new. If you actually presented me some interesting insight that was different than what I had been told before. Because in the end, that's what I like best. I like learning. I like growing. I like expanding my horizons and seeing things better. And in fact, in a lot of ways, this story has been an incredible growth experience for me in terms of having to live in the heads of so many other people for so long, to see things from their point of view, to analyze their writings. And one thing, actually, a friend of mine introduced me to a word actually I knew from Scrabble, but I had not known the meaning of it prior, is the word fisking, F-I-S-K-I-N-G, which is really to give a sort of verbal beatdown, to read someone's text and just very, very, very thoroughly refute it, go through all of their arguments, see things from their points of view, and tell them exactly how wrong they are, and just tear their argument to shreds. I do think that's something I've done a number of times in this. I think I did this first, one of the most interesting and best times, in my opinion, was when I actually gave my initial response to the incident report, and I did a line-by-line reading of both Jennifer and Evans's statements in the incident report. And I want to be clear that, like, this is a horrible tragedy. This is terrible, the way this has all happened, the way this has impacted my life and so many of their lives, and there's so much sad and there's so much anguish and pain here. But I am damn proud of myself for how I've handled myself in this situation, and that's one of the things I'm most proud of. I feel like part of what makes me a great person, part of what sets me apart, is my ability to take these people's views who hate my guts, who are absolutely horrible, absolutely mean and nasty, and to see things from their point of view, and to analyze it thoroughly, and to let them know how absolutely full of shit they are, and let them see their entire argument crumble to dust. And you know what? There are a lot of people in the world who are too caught up in their particular worldviews, their particular way of seeing things, not wanting to admit they could possibly be wrong or that the person they dislike could be right, and just are going to stick to their guns or are going to ignore it, are going to let it bounce off of them and never ever see that, wait a minute, this person is completely right. I am full of shit. I am the asshole. Right? Many people are not capable of that. But you know who I think is capable of that? Evans Clinchey. Evans may not admit it because he's married to this horrible person, Jennifer, and because they have gained a certain amount of social status within the Scrabble community based on the horrible treatment of me, and they've succeeded in creating this separate niche and getting me excommunicated from a whole lot of the Scrabble world. But you know what? I believe at a certain level, he knows that everything I wrote in that document, tearing his argument to shreds, was completely right on. Was a completely correct and true assessment of the situation and of his dishonesty and of how full of shit his arguments were. And he knows that at a fundamental objective level. I am right, he is wrong. I am the good guy and he is the asshole. And he's not even the biggest asshole in this situation. I think Jennifer and Chris Lipe are much bigger assholes. And I do think in a lot of ways he was fooled and ended up going a wrong way because he was around such bad people. But it doesn't change the fact that he's still a fucking asshole. But you know what? One of the things that pleases me so much about this story is that regardless of the outcomes, whether I ever play Scrabble again, whether you or other people are ever persuaded to believe me, Evans is still going to have to live with the pain his entire fucking life of knowing that everything I said is true and that I correctly called him out and that I am smarter and that I am morally superior to him. And you know what? He's a chicken shit who lost 4 of the last 5 times that we played Scrabble. And he's never going to be able to have any real superiority to me until he can start being a better person, admitting what he did, making me right, and stop being a coward and facing me man to man. Evans, you let your woman do all the talking for you. You did backstabbing, you did deception, you were a fucking coward. And you said that I abused women, which is a flat out fucking lie. And I haven't abused any women. But you know who I do like to abuse? Men like you who are fucking cowards, who are not manly enough to deal with people in a straightforward and honest way. And you will continue to be that coward for your entire fucking life until you face me. You will never show the world that you are a better Scrabble player than I am unless you actually sit down to play me and get over your fucking childish self. So, just wanted to say that. But I also want to say, why be good? I've talked a lot about virtue. I've talked a lot about honesty and truth. And you might say, hey, truth isn't winning, right? Not just in the Scrabble world, but in our political moment. It seems you could take a Machiavellian approach and say, you know, maybe you should be an unethical asshole. Maybe you should lie. Maybe you should just get the entire fucking community to live under a dishonest pretense to fuck over the people you don't like because you want a world that rewards you and punishes them, or you just want them out of your fucking life and that's the only way you can make that separation, or whatever it is. What is the point of being good? All right, and the thing about it, I actually do have an answer to that. The answer is that the more that we are bad, that we are not good, that we are immoral, the more it degrades our ability to see the world objectively, the more it actually makes us dumber and less effective. We've seen a whole lot of that from Trumpism and from a number of the other conservative movements in the world. But it's also true in a game like Scrabble, in a game like chess, where objectivity means something. All right? It is so often the case that people look back at their games and try to write a script that they played smarter than they did, that they try not to look objectively and fully critically at their moves. And in so doing, all they do is impair their own judgment and cause themselves not to play as well. The same is true with the governance of this game and with the unethical ways that I have been treated. There are so many people who create these justifications in their heads, and it's leading them further and further astray and degrading their morality, their reputation, degrading their judgment, degrading their essence, their soul in a lot of ways. And you're going to continue to keep sinking and being worse fucking people if you can't start facing the truth and doing what is right. Which means admitting what you have done to me, atoning for it, and repairing the damage, making my reputation whole. I want you to do these things, not just for my own self-respect, but because it's what you need to do to grow the fuck up. And I mean that about Evans. I mean that about Lukman and everyone else on the board. I don't mean it about Chris Lipe, just because I believe he is a lost fucking cause. I would be happy to be proven wrong, but I'm pretty fucking sure that he is eternally an evil, horrible, disgusting, immoral shitbag of humanity who is never capable of becoming an objectively good person. Again, please prove me wrong if you can. I wanted to talk also about a book, which unfortunately, I like to put a little stack of books here sometimes, of books that are kind of meaningful to me, that have some connections in my head to this story, to other things in my life that are related to it. But there's one book that I used to have that I can't seem to find on my bookshelf, otherwise I would have put it in this pile right here. And the book is The Autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. And it's a really great book, and it was actually one of the main inspirations of Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is in that pile. And Covey talks about it in the introduction. Ben Franklin's autobiography was written really with the primary audience in mind of his son. And he was trying to use his own life as an example of how to live a virtuous life to his son. Now you can say it's obviously got a certain amount of bias. He was not a perfect person, and he may have slanted things in a particular way to try to make himself look better. But I think one thing that also comes across in the book is that Ben Franklin is someone who was very obsessed with this idea of virtue and wanted to live a good, virtuous life. And he actually goes into a lot of detail about his formative years as a teenager in the colonial American colonies before it was an independent country, and why it led him in this direction. And a big part of it is that his father was a working man in his own industry, and a lot of people at that era, were apprentices of their parents and stayed in their family business, but he figured out pretty early on he did not want to be in his father's business. He wanted to do something different. And his father was actually very supportive of that, so he took him on a tour of all 13 colonies so he could learn about different industries, different people working in the business world, and see what he wanted to make of his own life. So, at I think about 17 years old or so, Ben Franklin made this very big trip around colonial America and learned a lot and met a lot of very prominent business people. And he talks in his autobiography about how when this happened, he came across a number of people who were successful in their particular careers or fields for a little while, but eventually came to ruin because of ways in which they were dishonest or not faithful, didn't live up to their word. And he noticed at a young age how even if people were able to get temporary advantage, even if they were able to do things temporarily well that helped them business-wise, helped them in their industry or whatever it was, that once they lost the faith of people, once people saw them for not being virtuous and not being good and honest, it ended up hurting their business and ended up hurting their trustworthiness. And Ben Franklin became very convinced at an early age that living a virtuous life was about being effective. It wasn't just about getting your way into heaven and being a good person and being remembered fondly in the future. He thought it was good business. It was good practical sense in the real world, in one person's present life, to actually be a good person, to be virtuous. And he decided to actually start making massive spreadsheets and actually tracking what were the different virtues and how good a job was he doing of living in accordance with those virtues. And keep in mind, this is all long before a computer era. He was literally making these spreadsheets by hand, drawing a grid on paper, and each column represented was 13 different virtues that he listed. And then each day represented each row represented each calendar day. And he got into a pattern for many years of looking back over his day, reflecting on it, on what he had done well and what he had done wrong, and putting an X in each box for each day in which he felt he had failed to live up to a particular virtue. And he was trying to be very honest and self-critical and figure out how can he keep getting better and better at this. And it was, for him, an incredibly good learning and growth experience, but it was also a very humbling experience in terms of learning how impossible it was to eliminate all the X's. That no matter how he tried to become a good person, that the vices kept crawling back, that his attempts to be virtuous were never entirely successful. But he still believed that process of self-reflection and criticism was a really, really integral part of his growth. And I want to tell you all that, like, I've taken a lot of this message to heart. And I got interested in that particular book shortly after I got interested in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I read way back in 2005 when I was dealing with a completely different crisis in my life. And I realized for a while that I really needed to work on making myself a much better person and focusing on the things I could control and not worrying about, regardless of what bad things happened to me or what was not in my control, what I could control, what Stephen Covey calls in his book, The First Habit, being proactive. And I do believe that my attempts at improvement, at self-improvement, made an enormous difference over the next several decades. And I believe it's not only in terms of the ways that I see I was able to be effective and make money and have a career and do other things successfully in life, but in terms of very concrete feedback I got from other people about how my demeanor was different, how interacting we were different after I spent a lot of time working on myself in a whole lot of ways. So I was extremely obsessed with self-improvement for a long, long time. But I gotta tell you, I feel like I've come out on the other side of that in terms of I spent so many years dealing with a whole lot of situations where I'm like, okay, regardless of how bad a hand I've dealt, regardless of how poorly other people treat me, what can I do better? What can I do to just maximize my potential, my ability, my situation, regardless of it all? And I often did that, and I didn't worry about whether it was fair. There were times, at work where I bore much heavier load than other coworkers did because I felt it was necessary, and I was able to step up and do it and make a good project, help the company, help the team, whatever it happens to be. But eventually there came a point where I realized I was trying to squeeze blood from a stone. I was trying to keep improving myself incrementally, little bit by little bit, little by little bit. And, I'd gotten to maybe 96% efficiency or effectiveness in certain areas, and maybe I could have squeezed that out to 96.5, 97, something a little higher. But there were other people around me who were still operating at 30 or 40% effectiveness. And if they did the most basic modicum of homework, the most basic bit of work on themselves and self-improvement, we would have had vastly, massively better results, far better than any little extra incremental improvement I could bring to the table. And I do believe that's a lot of what's happened with my Scrabble community, not just the people who've accused me, but a lot of the other people in positions of political power who've wronged me. It's not that I can't do anything better. It's that I've done a fuck of a really good job, given all the shit that you've thrown at me, all the ways in which I've been treated absolutely terribly, and so many of you have just done god-fucking awful jobs, been completely immoral, ineffective, and disgusting. And if you could just step up and become slightly better people, we could have far, far, far better outcomes. But so many of you keep digging in and just making yourselves worse. And I'm not at the point anymore of trying to persuade you. I'm at the point of, I want to berate you, I want to embarrass you, I want to humiliate you. I want to make sure that as long as you continue to be in my way and be horrible people, every single day is as painful for you as possible. Your existence just fucking sucks because I'm calling you out all the time. Why is that? Because my existence sucks almost every fucking day because of you. And you haven't been willing to do the good thing, so I need to make the current reality just as unpleasant for you as you make it for me, motherfuckers.